Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Moorman. We are lucky enough to have with us today somebody you never see, somebody who you really never hear about until it's important to hear about them. And we're talking with Luiz, Kahl, who is the owner, inventor, and entrepreneur of yachtscoring.com. Is that the correct website?
Yep, sure is.
First of all, we appreciate you coming aboard. And I say, as a longtime referee, you never see us until there's a problem, and then you see a lot of us.
That's so true.
I guess the first, just briefly describe what yachtscoring.com is and what you do, and then we can kind of get into background and maybe start back in Buffalo where this kind of all started.
Yacht Scoring is basically a full race management system. Everything from online registration, entry fee payments, documents, document management, the whole setup for regattas. Basically run everything from one design classes to multi-handicap events, circles, races. Everything runs in real time. Basically cross the finish line, depending on how fast the race committee can put the times in. You can see it. You can literally cross the finish line, pick up your phone, and you can see the results. Did away with the old having to sit and wait for results until 9, 10 o'clock at night. Like
Everything. I'm sorry.
No, it's just like we used to do back in the days.
I'm thinking literally everything from junior sale, weekend put together on Wednesday with no DOR sponsorship, all the way to the Mac to Port Huron race. So it's a lot at the low end and it's a lot at the top end, and it's just about almost every venue you can think of, right?
Correct. Everything you need to run an event from the race management side of it.
Okay. We're going to talk a lot about it, but I want to kind of go backwards a little bit. You are from Brazil.
Originally, grew up in Brazil.
I'm curious, not that this is any of my business, but no accent.
Lost that pretty early in the days when I moved back here or up here back in 81.
Kind of take us through the chronology from Sao Paulo to Buffalo, and then kind of how you ended up in Detroit.
Well, my parents were born and raised in Rio. My dad got a job with a American company headquarters in Niagara Falls. It used to be called Carborundum. If you have that sharpening stone in your kitchen, that used to be known as a carborundum stone.
Okay.
While at my second year of college, my dad was promoted and transferred. And headquarters in Carborundum Beam in Niagara Falls, we moved from Sao Paulo to Buffalo, New York, next door, because of education. Myself, my sister, younger sister, and brother. And we've been here since March of 81. I left the job I was working at Trico Products in Buffalo, New York, back in the end of 89. Moved to Toledo, Ohio, and ended up with the racing a boat here in Detroit right off the bat in that summer. And after 2.5 years of driving back and forth every weekend, sometimes 2-3 times a week, ended up getting a job in Detroit back at the end of 92.
Okay, now you didn't come to sailing like a lot of the guys that we've interviewed when you were 6 years old. Sailing came to you because your dad bought a boat. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was teaching scuba diving. He wanted to buy a sailboat, and I tried for 6 months trying to talk him out of it. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. We bought the sailboat, had somebody come in and teach us how to sail. Second day of the weekend, the guy looked at me and says, "You got a keen eye for detail. You ought to try racing." I'm like, now that's a different part of sailing I didn't know.
What kind of boat, and how did what was the fascination with your dad all of a sudden deciding to buy a sailboat?
Well, he had a sailboat when we were kids.
Okay.
3 or 4 friends, they had a powerboat. We used to go water skiing all the time every weekend. When I was 7, 8, 9 years old.
Sure.
And with that, the image I have in my mind is that it was kind of a lightning type sailboat, small for the kids, and that pretty much kept him on the water. And when he wanted to buy a boat, he wanted a sailboat.
The one question I've made constant through these interviews is that, do you kind of remember, now in your case, you're a little older when you kind of catch the bug. Do you remember when it was like, okay, I mean, obviously you moved, so instead of making all that driving back and forth, do you remember when it was more than an avocation, when maybe it was an obsession?
It was kind of an obsession from the beginning, actually. I grew up growing up in Brazil, involved with auto racing, kart racing when we were kids, and always enjoyed the competition, always enjoyed the racing part of it. And when they got me into sailboat racing, it was pretty much got me hooked right at the time. It's complex. It's sure it's slower than racing cars, but everybody's going at similar speeds. The competition, tweaking everything to make it go faster really got me going.
So, guy says to you, you've got an eye for detail, you've got an engineering background, and it kind of flutters from there, right?
Yep.
Kind of where did that first idea of somebody needs to put all this on computer to make it easier to score because it's easier than writing it by hand? When did that kind of give us the chronology of the metamorphosis of this whole program?
Well, it all started when I was working corporate back in 95, and the internet was starting up. Actually, early 95, late 94 is when it really came to public. I got the corporate business that I was working for into the internet. From that, I took Bayview Yacht Club into the web. That's why we have a 3-letter domain name, because those are gone really early. Next step was, by default, was the Mackinac race, trying to get results and registration online. The race chairman, one of the race chairmen, came up to me and says, "How about we do results in real time?" You start scratching your head and you go like, "Well, yeah, I guess we could do that." So we started doing real-time results. The first ones are Bayview Mackinac race. I think it might have been around 99, 2000. So we were really one of the first ones to do that. From that, it just kept going, the ball started rolling. What do you do? Chicago Yacht Club was doing theirs and asked me to come work for them and do their website, which I did. And if we can do this for a regatta, why not? Or for a race, why not do that for a regatta? I probably should have started Yacht Scoring 5 years before that, before the time I did. Would have probably owned the world, which would have been nice. But
the advancement of technology was also a part of that discussion, certainly.
True.
I mean,
sure, there's a lot of changes happen very fast over the time.
As an old newspaper guy, I have a newspaper design background, but that doesn't make me a web designer. I understand USA coordination of, symmetrical blocks and things of that nature,
right,
and what people want to read, but it does take the technology, and, you're pretty much self-taught, right?
Pretty much. When the web started, we paid a company to develop 5 web pages for us to get the company I was working for in the web. That cost us $5,000 at that time. And it took me a week, and I accidentally clicked on the right mouse on the screen and showed up and it says view source code. Looked at it, looked pretty much like text. I figured out I could do it myself instead of paying somebody to do it. That's how it all started.
It's easier to reach HTML than it is DOS, or for that matter.
Right. In starting with engineering, you had to deal with computers. So I've always been keen on the technology side of it and curious and try it. I'll try it. What's the worst that can happen? Can I get an error message?
What was
So
what was the first connection to Bayview? Did you join? Is that was part you remember?
when I moved to Toledo on the way here, started racing in Detroit. Bayview was a logical place to go racing for me. Uh, we would always go out racing DRYA, come back, and you meet the people. Where do you end up? You end up at Bayview having a drink. So, been my home club since actually I started going long before I was a member, but joined back in '94.
Okay, so you do the first one. I'm guessing as a volunteer on the first one, right?
No, the first.
With the very first race you scored was.
Oh yeah.
When did the thought in your head? Yacht clubs are great at making sure that they have lots of volunteers. I'm running the junior sailing program at Crescent, and I'm telling you, it's become a full-time summer job. And I'm a volunteer. Now, most of the other clubs are paying their guys. I say that, I volunteered, so I got nothing to bitch about. But the reality is, did you start out as a paid gig, the first one, or did it sort of morph into a business?
It kind of morphed. I always done the Bayview, always took care of the club and enjoyed volunteer for the club and helping manage the race, manage the Mackinac. I was chairman in 2005. It started becoming a business when it started costing you money to do it. And that's when Yacht Scoring came in.
Okay.
Because in order to provide the service, the time, the traffic, the bandwidth, and everything that needs to go with it so people can see and storing all that information, since we have all the data from the first event we've ever run, it costs money. And it costs time developing and putting together. It's a lot of effort. The program isn't done, and I don't see it ever being done, because from day one I started programming, I continuously maintain, add new rating systems, add options, add features to it. It's a nonstop deal. So
Technology advances, so does your program.
correct.
How many employees right now for Yacht Scoring? Just you?
Me, myself, and I.
So it's still a
It's still me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many races are you doing a year right now?
Well, it's sometimes a good question. Let's just say we had over 500 events last year in the system.
Can I be nosy and ask what a typical event costs?
Oh, the price is pretty simple. I try to make it good for the events. I charge $10 a boat for a regular keel boat, and $5 for a junior or a charity leukemia cup, hospice, trying to help the kids and the good causes to do it. So for an event, it's easy to calculate. Just figure it out. As the event grows, it costs a little more. As if it's a small event, it costs quite a bit less. So it fluctuates with it.
So June, July, and August obviously are your tax season in terms of how busy you are, right? Because
those are the busiest months yet. Correct.
You do a lot of out of the Midwest. You do a lot of stuff east, west, south.
We have events in most of the Great Lakes, all of the East Coast, Northeast. We do Florida. We have events in California. We have a lot of events in the Caribbean over the winter. Some of the Melges, 2032s and 24s in Europe. There's a few clubs in UK. They use it for all of their events and the actuals. So it keeps expanding.
Is there any other programs in the world like yours?
There are probably a handful of programs, yes. There's two in U.S. or one in the U.S., which is my main competitor, which is used by U.S. Sailing, called Regatta Networks. So it's primarily them and I. In Europe, there are 2 or 3 companies that do similar as we do here.
Any idea your market share?
That is one question nobody really knows,
Okay.
because we really don't know how many sailing events there are in the country.
Right.
Many of them are run by small clubs and small lakes. They're taking care of results on paper. A lot of them are run on spreadsheets that somebody developed. There are small scoring software, scoring programs that are free. That never show up. So I don't think anybody really has an idea how many events that we really have in U.S. in a year.
Okay.
I'm guessing 4,000.
Okay. I'm a guy that's got an event. Kind of take me through. I call you. Kind of take me through what it is that you do for me, as far as the paying client. Just so that if somebody were interested in doing your business, they would obviously call you, and right below your name here, you'll see your website. So if you need to call or get a hold of Louis, you can do that. So kind of take us through the procedural stuff.
I try to make it pretty simple. If you want to use Yacht Scoring to help manage your event, I need a copy of the notice of race, which contains pretty much every piece of info that I need. It goes from the event name, the dates, the contact, where it's going to be, what classes are going to be invited, the entry fees, the late fees, everything that I need is in that one piece of document. If for the payment part of it, I can collect the entry fees for you, but if you have a PayPal account, I can make the payments go directly to your account. Do you have the money as people are paying? With that information, I basically set up the event for you and hand you the address of the event in an administrative login so you can maintain the event. You can check the event. We have the opportunity to check before we make it live. Once we do, everything is good to go. You're up and running live, and I stand back basically to support. It's your event. You manage. You have everything you need to manage the event. It's very simple and intuitive, but it's also complete. You can do literally everything you need from A to Z in the system. If you ever have a question, that's what I'm here for.
I'm guessing the system is intuitive enough that you get a lot of repeat business because it was so easy to use the first time.
Absolutely. That's one of the things they love the most is how easy it is and simple to use.
It's like putting on your favorite jeans. Once you got to carry
keep it simple.
Yeah, no, I get that part.
Yep.
So you had 108 boats, I think 108 or 110 boats for Mackinac. It was half the size. What kind of manpower for you to get the Mackinac together, just in terms of hours? Is that an exception?
To manage the Mackinac race?
How much did you actually have to sit down to a computer for the Mac race this year at half the size? I'm just curious how many hours it would take you to do something like the Mac.
You're talking about developing the site or managing the event?
No, just managing. They open the site today, and 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, people are registering things. How much time do you actually spend on a race?
Oh, the Mackinac race, it's a huge amount of work. I mean, the volunteers put in times from, pretty much year round.
No, I'm referring to Yacht Scoring specifically.
Oh, that's let's just clear something. There are three totally separate events or systems.
Okay.
There's one that was created and developed for Bayview Yacht Club to the way the Bayview Mackinac runs. There's a lot of custom stuff to the way they do things.
Okay.
Same thing with the Chicago Yacht Club Mackinac race. And then there's a third one, which is Yacht Scoring, which is
three separate businesses.
Three separate businesses. Actually, the first two are unique. The Yacht Scoring is it's geared and developed for just any event, and it covers an enormous amount of stuff that is used by different events, but a standard format type.
Okay.
As opposed to a custom site.
Okay, so I'm assuming that Yacht Scoring has become more efficient because of the work with the Mac and the Chicago race.
And vice versa.
Okay.
It goes both ways. Since I do all three of them, there are ideas that we bring to the Max that I can put into Yacht Scoring, or we take it from Yacht Scoring and we put it into the Max.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is so we have some concept. If you had a 50-boat regatta and it was a one-day event, is that a 5-hour job, a 10-hour job, a 3-hour job? Just curious. And maybe
for me it's all support. So I spend if I did the job right, I won't spend. Okay. I spend very, very little time on it.
Okay.
It's really all the organizers. Remember, I'm not running the event.
Right.
I set up your event in the system for you to manage. So
No, I got it.
it's all your work on it.
There's other sports sites with video like Huddle and things that we use for other sports, and we use their platforms. But if we get stuck on not understanding the platform, we call them, which is very rarely.
Very much like Yacht
Just really
Scoring.
kind of the point I'm getting to. If I don't know anything about yacht scoring and I want to do an event, I call you, but it's my responsibility to make sure that the information is provided by me, not by you. That's
Right.
kind of what I was getting at.
And the way we have it set up, you're not doing registrations. You're doing very little input. Basically, the competitors are coming in and registering. So they're providing all the information, all the data is going into it. You're just managing all the data with the system. So it could be 8 or 10 hours, depending on the event.
Sure. Dumb question, but are most sailors computer literate, or is it? Is there? Because I've had other folks that I've talked to about computer systems with sports specific software, and some will say, "God, these guys are really bright." And I've had a couple of go, and it's like you got to walk them to the moon because they have no clue.
No, I made the system very simple. I have rarely had any issues with people that just couldn't figure out. I think the issue with, picking up a tablet or cell phones that people nowadays live with in their hands has helped a lot.
Yeah, we're almost to the point now at our ages we have to make the text bigger, but that's an easy thing on the phone, which has nothing to do with your program.
That's true.
I get that part of it. I'm going to start with the first easiest question. What's the best part of what you do? And I guess before I ask that question, is this full time? Are you still working?
Well, that is my work nowadays. It started a bit of let's try to fix some of the sailing results and management around here, and it's just grown into a full business.
Okay.
So it's pretty much full time.
That's got to make you happy.
Okay. Of course.
All right,
No, it does. It does, and it has taken me out of my own sport. I don't sail. I don't race as much as I used to. I mean, back in the days, we used to go out Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, do all kinds of racing, travel around everywhere to do it. So once you start saying, "Sorry, I can't. I got to work."
Yep.
You start losing it, and so it's been pretty much my work. I enjoy being around the people, and it has kept me with the sport. I have met so many people through it because of it, and that's what keeps me going, really.
I spend 120 days a year on skis, and I spend 5 days a year in the winter with actually poles in my hand because I'm carrying gates or I'm coaching or I'm whatever else I'm doing. So if you're involved in the process of the sport that you're managing or in this team,
Yes.
I have friends who have marinas that, they basically work 14 hours a day. You see them in the winter when they get a couple 3-week vacation, in the wintertime down in Florida. But if you're married to your sport, you're married to your sport. So
Yeah, and just for me, it's a 7 days a week deal. I mean, I spend a week maintaining, setting up events, working with people and their events. I get calls all the time about doing things and how they can do things. And on the weekends, I'm pretty much on call, because that's when the events are happening.
would your friends describe you as being somewhat anal retentive, being this kind of person who puts computer things together to make sure that every I is crossed, every T is crossed and every I is dotted? Is that a fair thing?
Sort of. I know that a lot of them come to me requesting a computer, but I try to help when I can. I'm not a full tech guy, but
Okay. Now, the other side of that coin is that I've listened this year with more discussions about rules and timing in those rules. Everybody's got a thing that works or doesn't work, or they weren't fast enough. It seems to me that I don't know how you have an argument about time with skippers when there's an entry point start, there's an entry point exit, and they're still going to try to find a way to argue. Does that
find your edge.
does that come up a fair amount that somehow the system doesn't work, or do you have those kind of issues with hotheads or crazy guys?
No, fortunately not. In sailing, that type of issue is actually pretty straight. There's a time to start. you called over early if you are. You got to come back and restart. And when the race committee gives you your finish, that's your official finish.
Yeah.
Very seldom we have issues with boats being placed in the wrong order, and it's usually a standard inquiry, not so much a protest anymore as it used to be. It's not a drawn out process.
I bring up the point. We had a chance to talk to Bob Hughes from Heartbreaker, who won, and there was some discussions about, am I get it right, yellow brick, is that the transponder that they were using?
Yellow brick, yep.
And that kind of played in, and there was some discussion about who went over the Canadian line, and they went kind of back and forth. Now, tying in a transponder to your program, is there any correlation between those two? Is that something you have to tie together, or does the time come from that yellow brick? Maybe talk a little bit about how that works.
Well, we set up this year because of the virus situation, everything that we had to go through. We lost our title sponsor last year. It was very difficult once the virus came to trying to get sponsor for the event this year. So we had to cut out a lot of volunteers, a lot of expenses. Chris Clark, which I'm sure you talked to, did a phenomenal job managing the race. And one of the things that we came up with was trying to do how are we going to do the scoring? How can we reduce the number of volunteers at the finish line? Because we have a trailer with sometimes 6 or 7 or 8 people, 3 shifts, and there's no way you can keep social distance on that.
Right.
So I had been receiving data from the trackers for the last couple of years behind the scenes. And we figured that why not, if we're getting that data from the transponder, meaning our system, why not use that data to be the finish line time, and we'll just take that time and do the scoring. And that's what we did. We basically told them that the finishes were going to be taken by the trackers, not the standard first part of the boat that crosses the finish line. So as soon as the tracker crossed the line, it sent a message up to the satellite to Yellow Brick system. Their system sent us the time, which we stamped as the boat's finish time, and it automatically calculated the corrected time for it. So it wasn't just fast, it was immediate, because everything happened automatically. And allowed us to reduce the number of volunteers and people we had at the island.
We all watched the race on the software because you're keeping track of where your friends were, and in some cases you pick up the phone and say to your friend who's in the middle of the race, "What is wrong with you? You're 12 miles behind. Just stop for dinner." And that's just to have fun with it. But it was kind of interesting because when I talked to Bob, he had talked about they had mounted the yellow brick on his mast, and it just literally got wet on the 52 because there's not a lot of coverage for the equipment. And it turns out
it was actually mounted on the starboard aft push bit.
Okay, yeah, that's right. But the point was it was accessed, it got wet. And it turns out that batteries and water don't work together very well. But yeah, you heard over the internet a number of stories that, just kind of perpetuate the world that we live in, which is, Martians are coming. So just one of those things.
Well, it's the speculation. Once people start speculating, it turns into rumors.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that he was having issues with it because he called me on Saturday afternoon when he couldn't see himself on the tracker.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that his tracker was wet, and when he got to the island, it had moisture inside. The units aren't perfect. I mean, they're as good as you can get. You can make something waterproof, and when you make thousands of them, whether you certify them as waterproof or not, some of them are going to get wet and going to fail.
Yeah.
And like you said, you put any electronics on water, and those two don't usually like each other. So it can happen.
Right.
And it did. We had somebody at the finish that took his time, and we did the scoring. So
I always find it amazing that the guys usually complain of the ones that are on the back end of the race. They're not the ones at the front end of the race, but that's
Everybody wants to
you can
win.
make anything you want out of that editorial comment. It was meant as it
Yep.
is. Where does the future of this endeavor? Where do you go from here with drones and with the kinds of its technology? Have you looked at what's possible in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we keep looking. We keep trying to stay up with it. I can see some of the distance races probably if adding a little more to tracking part of it, a function to it, for multiple reasons. One of them, it becomes a little more of a spectator sport. Like you said, you're following the race up all the way up, and you can see where the boats were. You can see where everybody was. The trackers are not put in the boats for the competitors. They're put in the boat for you and I sitting outside to find out where people are, where the boats are, and see how they're competing.
Right.
It costs money to put a tracker on the boat because you're dealing with satellite time. But if you can save on a number of volunteers and people and trailer and expenses that you have on the finish line and use that tracker time to do your scoring, you start improving the way the events are presented to the public and to the competitors at the same time.
I want to ask this question in a kind of left-handed way. I say that I'm left-handed, but I'll ask it anyway. Has yacht scoring become an after fact, meaning that everybody's so comfortable with it that they don't think about it, they just use it, rather than, oh my gosh, look at the technology we have? Have you gotten past the glitz of it and it becomes mainstream? And I think that would be the ultimate for you because now it's an accepted practice.
I think the whole process has. I think nowadays the competitors expect the results to be posted. I would like to think that vast majority of competitors expect it to be in yacht scoring. I think they know the name, they know reliability of it, they enjoy the use of the system, they enjoy the amount of data we store for them. We keep historical data and we can track performance of the boat for every event that they've been on, crew lists, everything. But it's nowadays, if you're not posting results in near real time, I think you're doing disservice for the competitor and your event, because the guys are looking for it. They want to know how they finish.
Sure.
One of the coolest things when we started doing that, and the guys figured out that they were crossing the finish line and the results were there, was being in the race committee and watching the guys cross the finish line. Somebody going down below, coming back with a cell phone to be able to look at the results and follow every finish to see how the boats move around in the results.
Yeah.
And the guys like that. It's part of the ports. I mean, nowadays technology is here. It is available. We're capable of doing it. So we need to do it.
It's also a safety issue. I know John Walton, coming back from the single-handed Mackinac race, loses a mast, gets run over by another boat, and all of a sudden, he's 0-0 on the radar. Then all of a sudden you start to worry about something. So at least there's, Coast Guard took care of bringing his boat in. And so scoring's part of it, but it's also safety. I don't think that's part of that same process.
Yeah, when you look at the tracking, yes, absolutely. And this is what I said, what I meant by it's not put on the boats for the competitors primarily. It's put on for the people following it, accompanying it, for safety reasons. Coast Guard, anything happens on the boat, you know exactly where the boat is.
Yeah.
Solves a lot of the issues from way back in the days when we had the storm in the Fastnet, when somebody got in the middle of the storm, called Mayday. The Coast Guard went to look for the boat. By the time they got there, the boat had already moved miles away, and they couldn't figure out where it was because in those days tracking doesn't exist. Nowadays, something happens, you can actually literally follow the boat. However long it took for you to get there, you can actually go directly to it because you know where they're at. Yeah. So yeah, safety plays a big part. You also have to, give a little space because some of these things do fail. And that's what happened on the Mackinac this year. We had actually 2 trackers that fail. So it stops transmitting at that point. So everybody moves and that one stays in place. And people think that something might have gone wrong. Not necessarily.
Well, technology would never fail. I mean, that's part of the problem with it, right?
We would like to think, we would like
Yeah.
to do something that never fails.
Fails all the time.
Absolutely.
It's just the nature of equipment and the way things operate. I mean, we've learned how to use Zoom and things that would have been, for you and I to do a normal interview, I'd have to have cameras and I'd have to show up. And now I sit down at my desk and I can, it becomes easier from a tool from a journalist. This is a terrific advice or a terrific device because you can do different kinds of things.
Right.
You also work sometimes as a pro. Am I correct? PRO?
I do a little bit of that. Yep. As a matter of fact, a couple of days ago, we were running the junior sailing regatta up at Crescent. I was running one of the circles for them.
That's always fun.
Yeah. We got to give back to the kids. We got to give, not only the kids, but the sport. And I love watching the kids sailing and being competitive, watching them on 420s, little kids, and their competitive face going at the start. And it's really nice to see that.
I coached professionally and I took over the junior program at Crescent, and I noticed last year that we were Monday through Friday and it was always coaching and we could spend hours. I believe the kids didn't have enough sandlot time, meaning that they didn't get a chance to just go out and sail. So we opened up on the weekends. We pay our coaches, instead of paying them bonuses, we pay them to come in and just oversee it, not coaching them. If somebody wants to go on a boat, first week there's 2 kids, second week there's 2 kids. And last weekend we had 23 on one day and I think we had 19 on the next. All of a sudden they're using the boats and they kept asking, is it free? Or how much do we owe? Nothing. It's part of what, if you're with us for the 2 weeks and we open on the weekends, we just want you, and we're not coaching you. Just go out in the little bay and go coach and just go sail. And being silly and doing the things, under supervision. And that's kind of the approach to these things. So it's been really fun watching that idea from a neophyte sail racer, see it grow a little bit. When do you sail now?
Good question. I'm actually got a call over the weekend, Wednesday, to hopefully go sail up on the East Coast. We'll do the vineyard race.
Okay.
That's a distance race from Stanford to just past Block Island and back.
Are you you own a boat?
No, I got plenty of OPBs and I enjoy those. Other people's boats.
Okay.
Been fortunate to sail with a lot of very competitive and great boats and great sailors around.
What's the best part of your job?
People, being around people, hanging around people, helping organize these events. And come Sunday, just smiling because everything worked and results are up and the events ran smooth.
And you push the button, it's all over, and there's all times that have been officially, dedicated and documented.
I just sit.
That satisfaction.
Just watching it happen for me is, it's huge. I probably don't take much. What's the word that I want? I probably don't realize how much responsibility I actually have when somebody signs up for it. But think about it. They put their whole event into the system, and if something fails, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah. So
watching it complete, watching it happen over the weekend, and watching it complete at the end of the day, Sunday, it's very gratifying.
In a couple of weeks, we're going to do a show on the obsessiveness of what we do as avocation and as hobby. And I've been keeping track of small things as a sailor, lifelong sailor, but certainly not a sail racer. And I started to do it from some other sports I'm involved with, but I did it with sailing. And between Friday at 5 o'clock on the Mackinac weekend, and I went up Monday and Tuesday to get some interviews with the guys in harbor. Between the Friday 5 o'clock and Tuesday night, when I got in the car for Tuesday morning when I got in the car to come back, I had checked the Bayview website 78 times.
That's it?
Well,
It wasn't enough.
so hear me out. So I kept track of some other things that I'm involved in, websites that I'm involved in, I coach lacrosse, and just other things I'm involved in. And I did not touch any of those other websites by even half of 78. And I'm making the argument numerically that we're crazy, for lack of a better term. And the technology makes it so much more fun and so much more responsive and immediate, which is what we're all about, right? Heaven forbid, use the data on my phone. So I think programs like yours certainly have a functional value, but I also think they have an entertainment value that sometimes gets lost in that process. And I think sometimes you have to take 2 seconds out to appreciate just what the technology is. It's not always evil. It has an upside. And I think that's something that you have to recognize.
Absolutely. And we do get attached to it. I think that's part of the reason why I'm trying to think, we can't watch a replay of sailing.
Right.
We either watching it live, or it's just not interesting anymore.
And it's like hockey. It's if you watch it over the television or try to watch it with a drone, it's mind numbing.
And it's a sport that I learned from the beginning that it's not just about the enjoyment. Sailing actually gets you to be passionate about it. And that's why we do this 3-4 times a week if we can. And sometimes we think we're not doing it enough. There's something about it that is, you get into it, you're really, truly passionate about it.
I won't give you a whole story, but I sailed my whole life. My wife, now 10 years ago, decided we wanted a power boat. So we bought a Flybridge Carver. We were at Markley. We were the only power boat on the entire Albatross dock. Everybody had sailboats 28 to 40. Did not get on a sailboat and asked every day. My power boat was used as a race for Albatross and for North Star. Never got on a power boat. I'm headed to Chicago tomorrow to see a friend of mine. There's some 12 meters that are being sailed in Chicago this weekend, and we're going to go out for a ride with some of the guys I've interviewed, Jobson among them. At any rate, did not get on a boat. We went to my friend's house. I kept going to him for 4 years. Everybody goes sailing. I finally, the 5th year, got on the boat. He has a 41 Pearson. Went out for the day. On the way back from Benton Harbor, well, we stopped in Benton Harbor. On the way back from Benton Harbor, I put my boat up for sale on Craigslist. And had 7 people, literally 7 people had called me. I showed it Monday and Tuesday, sold it on Wednesday, went to look for some boats. And about a week later, I found the boat that I wanted, and it was back in the slip. And, I don't drink and I don't smoke. And if I did, I'd probably be dead. So the application is exactly what it is. It's like you have a bad day and you go out and ski in the winter, you go out and sail in the summertime. And the reality to it is that when I get to the boat, whatever was bothering me isn't bothering anymore.
It doesn't bother anymore.
Because there may be teak to cover or to teak to sand or whatever it is that we're doing. I just don't think about it. I think that's the thing that is we sometimes forget those things.
Absolutely. And it just, since you mentioned skiing, I used to ski quite a bit. We used to have a ski resort or a ski condo south of Buffalo that we used to go skiing all the time.
Where?
And sailing has taken over my skiing too. Because I learned I like 4 seasons better, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. In wintertime, we fly down to the Caribbean to run races.
Yeah. Well,
so there goes my skiing.
I lived in Lake Placid, so you're talking about being in Buffalo. We used to talk about being upstate New York.
Oh, there you go.
And I used to have these conversations. I worked for the New York Times for a long time, and I had these conversations. The guy said, well, yeah, we're from upstate New York. And he'd say, Albany. And I say, Albany, that's interesting. If that's upstate, I'm 2 hours north of you. Yeah. You go to Gore Mountain, you go over to, we were still doing racing in those days and coaching and things of that nature. And we'd come out, the other end, come out to Buffalo and come out that way.
Exactly.
It was a whole different world. So, well, listen, I really appreciate the time. This has been a really cool conversation. I think you mean a lot to the sport, and the idea is just, again, 78 times of looking at scoring and looking at timing. Maybe my obsession is at least I'm looking at computers and not drinking beer, because I'm pretty sure 78 beers in that 5-day period I would have been that day to get off the ground. But
there you go. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the interest in the Yacht Scoring and calling me up for it.
Cool.
Really enjoyed it. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. Same with you, and have a great summer. And I'm sure that I'm sure our paths will cross.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks.